So we have created our user schema, and we have the pre-middleware as well that will has the password. So that means we can go to our controller and start creating a user. So when user tries to register for the first time, we can save that user in our database. So for that, first we have to make sure we get the data which is already here. Now we can destructure the data we need from request body. So we need, let's destructure from request body. So we need username, email, and password. Let me actually remove this previous one. We don't need that anymore. That was just for a test purpose. So let's get rid of that. And once you remove that, also make sure you remove from routes. Otherwise you will get this warning in the console. You'll see how the export is not there. Okay, so make sure you remove this one from here as well. Okay, so that's good. Now let's continue here. So you want to import the user model that we just created. So import user with capital U from. So we need to go one step up and then models/user. Now here we grab the name, email, and password from request body, and then we can do some check here as well. So let's do a bit of a validation. So we check if we don't get the name, we can return response with the status of 400, and we can send, it's not a JSON response, it's just a string. We're going to send the error message. So using send, we can send name is required. Okay, similarly, let's copy this. Let's do the same for password as well. So if no password, again we want to send this message that says password is required. Actually, this is not enough. We also need to make sure that password is at least 6 characters long. So if no password, or password dot length is smaller than 6, then we want to send this error message. We should say password is should be, let's just write, is required and should be minimum 6 characters long. All right, so we can validate the password that way. And most importantly, now we need to make sure that we don't have the user already saved using this email. So if you remember, email has to be unique, so we cannot save 2 users with the same email. So we can find that out by querying our database. So we're going to make a query to our database and find out if the email, if any user with this email already exists. So if it does, that means we already have that user. Maybe the user have already registered before. So in that case, we need to send some error message that email is taken, or something like that. Otherwise, we can go ahead and create a new user. So that was for name, that's for password. Now let's do it for email. So we can use async await. So we have async. Let's use this variable user exist. So its value is going to be, we're going to await, we're going to query user model using the capital U. Make sure this is the user model we have exported from our schema. So user dot, we can use find one function. So this mongoose model gives us this find one function, and you can find based on email. So based on email, and its value is going to be whatever is coming in request body. So that's email. So email. Now again, if you have key value same, we can just leave it like so. So we're going to try to find the user based on this email, and we use execute. Okay, so if we get the user here, that means the email is taken. All right, so we can take here if user exists. If that is true, if we get any value there, we can return response status of 400, and we can send this message that says email is taken. Okay, so we have all the checks here: name, password, and email. Once everything is done, then we can register the user. All right, so we can put it in a variable const user equals to, using the new keyword, you use new user, create a new instance of user with all this information, request body. So instead of manually putting name, email, and password, you can just give request body, and based on your schema, the information will be saved in the database. The reason I did this structure here is that made it much easier to do some validation here. All right, so const user equals to create a new instance of user based on whatever we get in the request body. Then we try to save in the database, and if there is an error saving, you can cat, and if we get an error, we can console log create user failed. You can see the error message in the console, and in this case you can also send the error response. So return response status of 400, and you can send error, try again, something like that. But otherwise we can save the user here. So we await user, which is here, new instance of user. So we await for that user to save, and once you save the user, if you want, you can console log and have a look what response you get. So await console log. Once we save the user, console log, let's say user created, and you can have a look at that user and return response.json. Okay, true. Okay, so this is the response I'm going to send. You can send the newly created user as well, that's not a problem. However, I like to just send this okay, true or false. Okay, because we don't really need this user information in the front end, so we can just send this a boolean value, true or false. So this is how we can create a user with all this validation. Now we can give this a try. So let's go to our front end. Let's make sure you have both server running, backend and front end. And here, let's try to register a new user. Let's use my email, ryan@gmail.com. Actually, it's email. So name is Ryan, email address, let's use that, and password. Okay, so let's have a look. At the moment, we're not doing anything. We're not redirecting the user or anything like that. We just see in the console. So if you submit, you got this response here, you can see, and we have the data that is okay, true, which means we have successfully registered a user. That is great. Now again, make sure to always keep an eye on the network tab. You might come across any errors. Okay, I will show you a list of possible errors you could get, and I will try to help you. So that's the successful response. If you don't get that, always go to the network tab and have a look here. Click on these names here, and you can see you made request to this endpoint, your backend domain /API /register. So always check this is correct. Make sure this is the right method, post or get, whatever that is, and come down here and make sure you are sending the data. Okay, and then obviously you can check what response you got. So that is great. Let's have a look in the console. You can see user has been created. So password has been hashed. Our timestamps has been automatically created and updated here. Beautiful. Now let me open up my database as well, row 3t. So if you're using Mongo Atlas, you can go to Mongo Atlas and visually see the database as well, no problem there. Okay, so let me connect. So here you can see the database has been automatically created, booking Udemy. If I double click, go to the collections, I see users collection and I have one user here. Beautiful. If you have any issues, let me show you. I have written down some of the steps. So some of these issues you might come across. If you have any issues, always inspect the network tab, which I just show you. That is super important. Inspect here, check what response you got and what headers you're sending, or the method and the data, whatever you're sending. All right. Next possible issue could be the endpoint. If you have the wrong endpoint, and that is also, you can see in the network tab, you can see this is the right endpoint. Check what payload is sent, so which is here all the way down. Make sure you are sending this correct information. Check what method is used. Make sure you have the right method. We are making a post request, and also in your server, go to your routes and make sure you have post, not get. Okay, check here as well. Another possible reason could be, okay, so you saw you know how to take the preview and response in the terminal here as well. And finally, I have a list of these very useful debugging tips which I've written as an article in my site codecontinue.com, which you can also visit. This should really help you. So if you go here in the tutorials, you'll find this article, and I have written out a couple of points. These are super useful, that helps you debug any mern stack application when you're working with a client side and server side with the API. Okay, so this is great. We have been able to successfully register a user. Now what happens if somebody tries to register with the same email more than once, because this email is taken now, right? So another user cannot come and try to register using the same email. Let's see what happens here. If you try again, let's go to the console, and you can see here you got bad request, and more details must be found here. If you go to the network tab, and you can see here it's red. So if you click here, you can see email is taken. So this is great, we're getting this response. Now in the following lecture, let's see how we can show this error message. And once the user has been created, we also need to empty these fields and maybe redirect them to some other page. All right, so let's continue this in the next lecture.